Yahweh uses even the simplest tools to create his works, as my father used to say. My father, he was a great teller of stories. And he shared many wonderful sayings he did, and he had a story for every occasion. And he was as wise as the wisest rabbi in Jerusalem he was. He was an honest businessman. He built up this inn that you're in tonight. And he treated people fairly. And I inherited this inn from him. It belonged to his father before him. But I'm rattling on, as my avatar would say. It bothers her that I talk so much and share stories with the customers. She says I talk too much and I work too little. Of course, she's happiest when she's complaining or yelling at the help. And believe me, she's one happy woman. I guess she's right, though. Well, sometimes, anyway, she's right. When times are slow, and they often are when the trade routes are empty, I have time to stop and tell stories and hear news from all around the region. When things are busy, I would most likely forget my name, but my customers weren't yelling it at me all the time. Bartimaeus, Bartimaeus, Bartimaeus. I run a small business, and I'm an honest businessman. I give fair nature for a fair price, and my food is wholesome and it's filling here at the inn, and the rushes on the floor are changed regularly. Even my very smallest room is clean for the traveler who stays the night, or the trader who stays the month. It's not a fancy place. You know, there are fancy places in the city's heart and more imposing buildings near the city's gates, but shoot, we do all right here. We make a living. And of course there are the Romans. I guess they aren't too bad around us. But some of them don't like us. They see us as something less than people, and they treat us that way too. And I have as little love for those who occupy our land as anyone else does. The common soldiers who desire drink and companionship, they usually go other places. We host the occasional petty officer and his family, who are good enough for us. But here I go again. I'm getting away from my story. Now, where was I? Oh yes, the inn. A good little inn. And I hope to pass it on to my son someday. That night actually started out in Rome. I say that because that's where that Caesar fellow lives. And he decided he wanted to see how many people lived in the whole of his kingdom. I really think he planned on raising taxes was what he was doing. You don't trust the fox to guard the hen house, my father used to say. Anyway, Caesar was determined to find out how many people lived where, and so he sent everyone back to where their father's home. Now, you have to understand, our town is but a small stop on the busy trade routes, but it's part of David's house, and boy, are we proud of him. You know David, don't you? The king, the real king, not like that Caesar fellow. Boy, I can tell you stories about David. What? Okay, I'll get back to my story. That was Abigail. She was making herself happy by yelling. Anyway, the orders go out, but the local officials, they can't begin to handle the flood of people who are coming into town, and much to the sit and shout at me, "Bartimaeus, give me a drink. Bartimaeus, get me some food. Bartimaeus, Bartimaeus, Bartimaeus." Every evening became a blur. Now, even though it's been some time ago, I remember that one night so very well. See, the evening started like any other. People who were caught up in the madness of the event were trying to find a place to stay and food to eat. How many times I received a tongue lashing over that week or two from those who I had to send away. Well, what was I to do? My rooms had been full for weeks. Then there was a man at my door. I really didn't pay him much mind. I was far too busy. And when I looked up, he was standing there. And you could read that familiar story on his face like everyone else. He was looking for a place to stay. He must have tried other places in the city before he ended up here. As he looked around the common room, it was obvious to him that my humble inn was full, beyond full. It was bursting at the seams. He came anyway, asked me for a place to stay, any place to stay. And I could hardly hear his voice above the noise in the room, but I knew his story. I'd heard it 100 times before. I was just about to turn him away when I saw his wife through the open door. Poor thing, she wasn't any more than a child. She was riding a scruffy old donkey and was long overdue to bring a child into the world. Yet, there was a wonderful kind of peace in her face. It was that spatial look that Yahweh gives women in her condition. And I knew that I couldn't turn them away. There was no way I could send them back out on the street. But there was no place for them. And even though I knew that my avatar would have my head if she found out, I offered them room in the stable. The beasts in the stable would be quite warm, and it would be warm. They'd be warm enough to ease the chill from the night. And besides, that sweet smell of hay would help cover the smell of the slop in the back alley. And from the look on that young man's face, you thought I'd given him an inheritance. He thanked me, and then he thanked me again, and I sent my youngest son with him to throw out some fresh straw. And I really didn't have time to think about them again that evening. I had customers waiting, but it was later in the night, quite really a long time later, and the fire on the hearth had died down, and the last of the customers had gone to bed when I first saw it. I thought it was my imagination at first. There shouldn't be a light like that in the sky unless half the town was on fire. And I ran out into the lane and I saw it glow off way beyond the hills. And I did nothing but just stare at it for a while. But then I was deathly tired, and I knew it was long past time for my own bed. It was wonderment, folks, but wonderment that was beyond me. And I turned to go back inside, and as I did, I noticed a commotion down at the stable. At first, I thought it was thieves. And if it was, they were going to feel the sting of my stick on their backsides if I followed. I'll help anyone willing to work, but I have no love for those who would steal from Jew or Gentile. And then I remembered the young man and the young girl with the child, and I forgot all about it. And now it looked like someone had set the stable on fire. And I burst into the stable, but something stopped me short, folks. It wasn't what was happening there, it was what wasn't happening. You know what I mean? There was no fire, no commotion, no sound. It really was like as if the earth was holding its breath. Even the animals had become so quiet. And there they were. A man and his wife and a little baby whose age could be counted in moments. Now, I've seen babies. And I have as soft a heart for them as any other. stood and I stared like the fool I thought I was. And the woman looked up and then she smiled at me. And she smiled as if she knew secrets that I could never fathom. And my old stable looked like a regal court holding a queen. And then they came down from the hills, first by ones and then twos, then more and more shepherds. Some silent as the night, others crying and laughing. Some came to scare, others came to heal. But they came crowding in to see the baby. And they talked about visions and angels and voices. And they were talking like the prophets of my great-grandfather's time. I don't know exactly what they were looking for, but I knew what I saw and what I felt. Yahweh himself was there. And I don't know how I knew that, but I knew it. And I gave him a bed of scroll. Morning was coming on, and I had to sneak away and get some sleep. And I thought to check on that young couple again about midday, but then I got busy, and by the time I did go to check on them, they were gone. How I wish I'd taken a moment to ask them who they were and where they had come from. How I wish I'd taken time to ask them what it all meant. I hope they remember me kindly. There's Avatar again. She's come to scold me about talking too much and working too little, and I guess I must be about my chores. I never did find out any more about that young family, but somehow I have a feeling that Yahweh has great things planned for them. Great things indeed. Jesus came that night, and I gave him a bed of scroll. You've taken time this night in your Christmas celebrations to make some room for him. But what about the other 364 days of the year? Do you make room for Jesus on those days as well? We do here at Glendale United Methodist Church. We gather every Sunday for worship him, 4 to 11. We invite you, if you don't have a home church or no place to go, come and worship Christ with us. Make a place of your